My son's elite private school teacher bullied me for being a lowly maintenance worker. He didn't realize I was the 4-star admiral conducting the school's new security audit the following morning. I finished a grueling 12-hour maintenance shift at the naval base. The pipes in the officers' quarters had burst, flooding 3 floors and requiring all hands on deck. My uniform was soaked with muddy water and sweat. I checked my watch and realized I was going to be late picking up Trevor from Whitmore Academy. I drove straight to the school without changing. The parking lot was filled with gleaming luxury vehicles that made my government-issue sedan look even more out of place. I spotted Trevor waiting by the main entrance, his expression shifting from relief to mild embarrassment when he saw my mud-caked boots and stained uniform. "Sorry I'm late, son," I said as he climbed into the passenger seat. "Had an emergency at the base." Trevor nodded, glancing at my filthy appearance. "It's fine, Dad. We can just go." I noticed his math teacher standing nearby, watching us with thinly veiled contempt. "Is that Mr. Donahue? I should introduce myself." Trevor's eyes widened in alarm. "Dad, you don't have to." But I was already out of the car. I'd heard enough about Pierce Donahue over dinner conversations to be curious about the man who seemed to have such a negative opinion of military families. "Mr. Donahue," I called, extending my hand. "I'm Trevor's father, James Langford." Pierce Donahue, a man in his 30s wearing an immaculate suit, looked at my mud-caked hand and hesitated before giving it the briefest shake possible. His eyes traveled from my dirty boots to my stained uniform with obvious disgust. "Ah, yes, Trevor's father," he said, with a condescending smile. "I see where the boy gets his practical mindset from." I maintained my polite smile. "Just finished an emergency maintenance shift. Burst pipes don't care about rank." Pierce's eyebrow raised slightly. "Indeed. Well, perhaps this is a teachable moment for the students. Education is the path to advancement for certain people." I noticed several parents nearby, including a woman named Karina, who I'd met at a school function, watching our interaction with surprise. Trevor's face had turned bright red with embarrassment. "We'll see about that," I replied calmly, my smile never wavering. Pierce turned away, muttering just loud enough for me to hear. "This is exactly why we need to maintain Whitmore's standards. Blue-collar families simply don't understand the culture we're building." The drive home was uncomfortably silent. Trevor stared out the window, clearly mortified by the entire exchange. I wanted to say something reassuring, but decided to wait until we were home. Faith was already preparing dinner when we arrived. She gave me a quick kiss, wrinkling her nose at my appearance. "Rough day, Admiral?" "Just the usual maintenance emergency," I replied, heading to shower and change. Dinner was quiet until Faith asked Trevor about his day. He pushed food around his plate before finally looking up. "Dad, I'm sorry about Mr. Donahue," he said. "He's been making comments about manual labor for weeks now." I kept my expression neutral. "What kind of comments?" Trevor sighed. "He uses you as an example in class sometimes. Says things like, if you don't apply yourselves, you'll end up fixing pipes for a living instead of designing the systems that control them." Faith's fork clattered against her plate. He said, "What about your father?" I placed my hand on hers. "It's all right. Things might change soon." Trevor looked confused. "What do you mean?" Faith turned to me with sudden understanding. "Is this about that security assignment you've been preparing for?" I nodded, allowing myself a small smile. "I've been assigned to conduct Whitmore Academy's comprehensive security audit, starting tomorrow morning." Trevor's eyes widened as the implications dawned on him. "You're going to be at my school? In uniform?" "Full dress uniform," I confirmed. 4 stars and all. Faith couldn't suppress her laugh. "Oh, I would pay good money to see Mr. Donahue's face when he realizes who you actually are." Trevor still looked uncertain. "What exactly does a security audit involve?" "Evaluating all aspects of campus safety," I explained, "from physical infrastructure to emergency protocols. I've been studying Whitmore's security layout for weeks now." "And Mr. Donahue has no idea who you really are?" Trevor asked. I shook my head. "Based on his behavior today, I'd say that's a safe assumption." Faith squeezed my hand. "Just promise me you'll be professional about this." "Always," I assured her, though I couldn't help looking forward to tomorrow's visit. "I'm just doing my job." Trevor finally smiled for the first time since I'd picked him up. "Can I be there when Mr. Donahue figures it out?" "We'll see," I said, already planning exactly how to handle the situation. "We'll definitely see." I spread out Whitmore Academy's security blueprint across our dining room table that night. The outdated layout showed multiple unlocked entrances, blind spots in the camera system, and inadequate emergency protocols. I'd been studying these plans for weeks, but seeing them after meeting Pierce Donahue gave me a new sense of purpose. Faith brought me a cup of coffee and looked over my shoulder. "This place has more security holes than a fishing net. 27 major vulnerabilities at last count," I confirmed, highlighting another problem area. "And that's just from the documentation." Lionel, my naval security specialist, had sent a preliminary report that was even more concerning. "Sir, the main entrance metal detector hasn't been calibrated in 3 years," he'd written. "The side entrance by the gymnasium remains completely unmonitored during school hours." I went to bed with a clear plan for the morning. This wasn't about Pierce Donahue anymore. This was about protecting hundreds of students, including my son. I parked across from campus at 7 the next morning wearing civilian clothes. The school day wouldn't officially start for another hour, but I needed to observe the actual security practices, not just what was on paper. Seth, the elderly security guard, sat in his booth reading yesterday's newspaper. He completely ignored 3 students who entered through an unlocked side door without showing IDs. I made a note in my tablet. The administration building caught my attention immediately. Floor-to-ceiling windows with no security film whatsoever. A determined intruder could access the main office in seconds with a simple rock. Faculty members drove into their parking area without showing identification. Not a single car was checked. No one monitored who entered or exited. When the main entrance opened, I watched as students filed past the metal detector. The machine beeped repeatedly, but Seth just waved everyone through without checking bags. Several students walked around it entirely. I'd seen enough. I drove back home and changed into my full dress uniform. 4 stars on each shoulder, ribbons across my chest, gold braids on my sleeves. This wasn't about intimidation. This was about ensuring my role and authority were absolutely clear. When I returned to campus, the transformation was immediate. Seth literally jumped to his feet when he spotted me approaching the entrance. His newspaper fell, forgotten to the floor. "Good morning," I said, showing my credentials. "Admiral James Langford. I'm conducting the security audit today." Seth snapped to attention with surprising speed for his age. "Yes, sir. We weren't expecting you until—" "That's rather the point of a security assessment," I replied, signing the visitor log. "I'll need access to all areas of the campus." Through the glass doors, I saw Aisha, Dr. Caldwell's assistant, spot me from her desk. Her eyes widened in recognition. She immediately picked up her phone, her hand slightly shaking as she dialed. I walked through the metal detector, which beeped loudly. Seth didn't ask to check my briefcase. Another security failure noted. The administration building was suddenly buzzing with activity. I could hear Dr. Caldwell's voice from her office, sounding stressed and urgent. "Get Evan and Terrell here immediately. Tell them it's an emergency." I waited patiently in the reception area, reviewing my notes. Within 15 minutes, 2 men in business suits arrived, looking concerned and slightly out of breath. "Evan and Terrell, school board members according to my files. The Admiral is already here," Aisha whispered to them, not realizing I could hear every word. "Dr. Caldwell says it wasn't supposed to happen until next week." Evan straightened his tie nervously. "Did he see the side entrance situation?" "I think he saw everything," Aisha replied. I stood as Dr. Caldwell emerged from her office, her professional smile not quite hiding her anxiety. "Admiral Langford, what an unexpected pleasure. We thought the security audit was scheduled for next week." "Security assessments are most effective when unannounced," I said, my voice calm but firm. "It allows us to observe actual practices rather than prepared demonstrations." I caught movement in the hallway and saw Miles, Trevor's friend, staring at me with wide eyes. He immediately pulled out his phone and started typing furiously. I knew exactly who he was texting. Dr. Caldwell gestured toward her office. "Please, Admiral, let's discuss your initial observations in private." I nodded and followed her. Evan and Terrell trailing behind us, looking increasingly uncomfortable. They had good reason to be concerned. What I'd seen in just 1 hour was enough to fail their entire security protocol. As we entered the office, I placed my briefcase on the conference table and removed my tablet. "Let's begin with the 27 critical vulnerabilities I've identified so far." Quote, Evan and Terrell exchanged worried glances. This was only the beginning. Dr. Caldwell greeted me with forced professionalism. Her smile was tight as she gestured for me to take a seat at the head of the conference table. Evan and Terrell sat to my right, both looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. "Admiral Langford, we're honored to have you conduct our security assessment," Dr. Caldwell said, "though we were expecting you next week." I placed my tablet on the table and pulled up my notes. My preliminary observations revealed issues that couldn't wait. The safety of these students, including my son, is at immediate risk. Evan and Terrell exchanged worried glances. They knew what was coming. "Let me be direct," I continued. "I identified 27 critical security failures in just 1 hour this morning. That's unacceptable for any educational institution." Dr. Caldwell's smile disappeared completely. 27? Surely that's an exaggeration. I turned my tablet toward them. "Unlocked side entrances, uncalibrated metal detectors, unmonitored visitor access. Shall I continue?" The room fell silent as I scrolled through my findings. Each new violation made the board members shift uncomfortably in their seats. I was halfway through my presentation when the door opened without a knock. Pierce Donahue walked in carrying a stack of test papers. He was focused on the top sheet, completely unaware of the meeting in progress. "Caldwell, I need to discuss these test scores with—" He looked up and froze mid-sentence. Our eyes met across the room. I watched the recognition dawn on his face as he took in my uniform, the 4 stars on my shoulders, the rows of ribbons across my chest. His mouth opened slightly, then closed. The test papers trembled in his hands. "Mr. Donahue," Dr. Caldwell said, her voice unnaturally high, "this is Admiral Langford. He's conducting our security audit." Pierce stood motionless for several seconds. The color drained from his face. "We've met," I said calmly. "Yesterday afternoon, in fact." Pierce swallowed hard. "Admiral, I had no idea. You were in work clothes. I didn't recognize." "That's precisely the problem, Mr. Donahue," I interrupted. "Security isn't just about locks and cameras. It's about awareness, perception, the ability to see beyond superficial appearances." I turned back to Dr. Caldwell and the board members. "Mr. Donahue's behavior yesterday perfectly exemplifies one of your most serious vulnerabilities. Prejudice creates blind spots. Those blind spots create security risks." Pierce took a step toward the door. "I should let you continue your meeting." "Actually, I'd like you to stay," I said. "This concerns you directly." Pierce reluctantly moved to the side of the room. His usual confidence had vanished. When I arrived yesterday in my work clothes, Mr. Donahue immediately dismissed me as unimportant. He made assumptions based solely on my appearance. I kept my voice professional, detached. "That same attitude permeates your entire security approach." Evan cleared his throat. "Admiral, With all due respect, how does one teacher's behavior relate to our security protocols? Because security starts with culture, I replied. Your guard doesn't check IDs because he doesn't think it matters. Your staff ignores alarms because they're inconvenient. And your teachers judge people based on mud-stained uniforms rather than recognizing potential threats or allies. Pierce stared at the floor. His knuckles were white around the test papers. Yesterday I could have been anyone, I continued. A concerned parent, a potential donor, or someone with harmful intentions. But Mr. Donahue saw dirty boots and decided I wasn't worth basic respect. Dr. Caldwell shot Pierce a look that could have melted steel. Admiral, please know that Mr. Donahue's behavior doesn't reflect our institutional values. Doesn't it? I asked. Because my observations suggest otherwise. Your security guard couldn't be bothered to check my credentials today. Your side entrances remain unlocked during school hours. Your cameras have blind spots that haven't been addressed in years. I turned to face Pierce directly. Tell me, Mr. Donahue, what did you say about blue-collar families yesterday? Something about not belonging at Whitmore? Pierce's face flushed with embarrassment. Sir, I deeply apologize for my behavior. I made inappropriate assumptions. You certainly did, I agreed. You assumed I was just some maintenance worker who didn't deserve your respect. The reality is I've spent 23 years securing naval installations against threats you can't imagine. The room was completely silent now. Even Dr. Caldwell seemed at a loss for words. Real work isn't about the clothes you wear, I said, addressing everyone. It's about responsibility, integrity, service. I fixed those pipes yesterday because the job needed doing, regardless of my rank. That's what real professionals do. I returned to my tablet and continued my presentation. Now, about those 27 security violations, let's discuss how we're going to address them immediately. Pierce remained standing against the wall for the entire presentation. He didn't say another word. The board members took extensive notes, occasionally glancing at Pierce with undisguised anger. When I finished, Dr. Caldwell looked genuinely shaken. Admiral, we'll implement every recommendation. You have my word. Good, I said, standing up, because I'll be back in 1 week to verify progress. The safety of these students isn't negotiable. As the meeting concluded, I packed my tablet into my briefcase. Pierce approached me cautiously. Admiral Langford, I want to apologize again for my behavior, he said quietly. It was completely unacceptable. Mind in. I looked at him for a long moment. Mr. Donahue, I accept your apology, but I'm not the one you've truly wronged here. His confusion was evident. I don't understand. My son, I said, and every other student whose parents you've demeaned because of their occupations, they're the ones who deserve your apology. I picked up my briefcase and headed for the door. Think about that before you step into a classroom again. I continued my security presentation with Pierce still standing awkwardly against the wall. His face remained flushed with embarrassment as I detailed each of the 27 violations I'd found. The board members took furious notes, occasionally shooting Pierce disapproving glances. In conclusion, I said, closing my tablet, Whitmore Academy's current security posture is completely unacceptable. These vulnerabilities put every student at risk, including my son. Dr. Caldwell nodded solemnly. Admiral Langford, I want to personally apologize for both our security failures and Mr. Donahue's unprofessional behavior. This isn't the standard we claim to uphold. Apologies are a start, I replied, but I need concrete action. I'm recommending a comprehensive security overhaul with a strict timeline for completion. Evan leaned forward. What kind of timeline are we talking about, Admiral? 30 days, I said firmly. The most critical vulnerabilities need to be addressed immediately, the rest within a month. Terrell looked alarmed. That's an extremely aggressive schedule. Our budget cycle doesn't allow for— Your budget cycle doesn't concern me, I interrupted. The safety of these students does. I'll be submitting my full report to the Department of Education by end of day. That got their attention. No one wanted federal scrutiny of their security practices. Dr. Caldwell quickly assured me they would find the necessary resources. The meeting concluded, and everyone began filing out. Pierce lingered behind, clearly waiting to speak with me privately. I deliberately took my time gathering my materials. Admiral Langford, he said once we were alone, I wanted to apologize again for my behavior yesterday. It was completely unprofessional and disrespectful. I looked at him directly. Mr. Donahue, I accept your apology, but I'm curious about something. What exactly are your qualifications to teach mathematics? He blinked in surprise. I have a master's in education from Westridge University. I've been teaching for 8 years, and in those 8 years, did anyone teach you that judging people by their appearance was acceptable educational practice? I asked. Pierce looked at the floor. No, sir. It was inexcusable. Before he could continue, the door opened. Trevor stood there, his eyes moving between Pierce and me. Miles had obviously texted him about what was happening. Dad, he said hesitantly, is everything okay? I nodded. Everything's fine, son. Mr. Donahue and I were just finishing our conversation. Pierce turned to Trevor. His usual confidence was completely gone. Trevor, I owe you an apology as well. The comments I've made about your father and manual labor were completely inappropriate. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. Trevor looked stunned. He clearly hadn't expected a public apology. Thanks, Mr. Donahue. I'll leave you two alone, Pierce said, quickly exiting the room. Trevor stared at me. Dad, what exactly happened in here? Just a security assessment, I replied calmly, and perhaps a lesson in respect. 1 month later, Whitmore Academy had implemented every single one of my security recommendations. The side entrances now had proper locks and monitoring. The metal detector was calibrated and staffed by a trained security officer. Seth had been reassigned to a less critical position. Dr. Caldwell sent me weekly progress reports, each one detailing the improvements they'd made. The final report included a note that all faculty members had completed mandatory sensitivity training. Pierce Donahue's name was prominently mentioned as having shown exceptional growth. Trevor reported that Pierce's classroom behavior had completely changed. He doesn't make those comments anymore. Trevor told me over dinner, and he actually apologized to the whole class about using judgmental language. I wasn't entirely convinced the change was genuine, but I was pleased with the results. The security improvements were what really mattered to me. I returned to Whitmore Academy for an official follow-up inspection. Once again in full uniform. The difference was immediately noticeable. The new security guard checked my ID properly before allowing me entry. Students showed their IDs at the entrance. The cameras had been replaced and repositioned to eliminate blind spots. As I walked through the hallways, students and teachers alike nodded respectfully. Several students thanked me for my service. It was a stark contrast to my previous visit. I was completing my inspection when Pierce approached me in the main hallway. Trevor was with me, showing me the improvements to the emergency exit procedures. Admiral Langford, Pierce said formally, I wanted to thank you for what you did here, not just the security improvements, but for the wake-up call I needed. I studied his face for signs of insincerity, but found none. I appreciate that, Mr. Donahue. I've been doing a lot of reflection on my biases, he continued. I realized I've been judging people based on completely superficial criteria. It's not who I want to be as an educator. Trevor looked between us, clearly surprised by this interaction. I decided to take a chance. Mr. Donahue, we're conducting tours of the naval base next month for educators interested in STEM applications in military service. Would you be interested in attending? Pierce's eyes widened. I would be honored, sir. Truly. 3 months later, I stood at the podium during Whitmore's graduation ceremony. Dr. Caldwell had invited me to give the commencement address as a thank you for the security overhaul. Trevor wasn't graduating yet, but he sat in the front row, beaming with pride. Real service isn't about rank or recognition. I told the assembled students and parents, it's about doing what's necessary, when it's necessary, regardless of who's watching. I spotted Pierce in the faculty section, nodding along with my words. He caught my eye and gave me a respectful nod. The transformation seemed genuine. After the ceremony, Trevor approached me with a broad smile. Dad, that was amazing. Everyone was so impressed. Just doing my job, son, I replied. Both jobs, actually. Mr. Donahue asked if he could join us for dinner sometime. Trevor said hesitantly. He wants to hear more about your naval career. Is that weird? I considered it for a moment. Not weird, just unexpected. Tell him we'd be happy to have him over. Sometimes the most important security improvements aren't about locks and cameras. They're about changing perspectives. And in that regard, mission accomplished.